Morning. How's everyone doing? Great to be here. My name is Lawrence Crowther. I work at a company called Pivotal Labs. Has anyone heard of Pivotal Labs? A couple people?
Our employees at the front have, which is always good to know.
This is my colleague, Catherine.
So I'm Catherine McGarvey. I run our New York office of Pivotal Labs. Pivotal is the master company, so maybe you haven't heard of Labs, you might have heard of Pivotal, but we'll tell you about it today anyway.
And I'm the Sydney director for Pivotal Labs. We just started a couple of weeks ago, operations here in Australia. Very excited to build a business from scratch. So what is Pivotal Labs? As Catherine said, Pivotal Labs is part of Pivotal software company. You may have heard of a couple of our famous kind of open source projects, Cloud Foundry. Anybody heard of Cloud Foundry? Or Spring in the development community? Pivotal Labs is a division within Pivotal that focuses on agile software development. And kind of our mission statement, if you will, is we're transforming the way the world builds software. And we do that in a couple of different ways, and we'll show you here today. But one of them is we invite our customers into our office to co-locate with us and really learn everything that we do. And then they go back to their own office and kind of become agile as well after the engagement.
So we've been around since 1988, so we're not a brand new company by any means. And that whole time we've really been practicing sort of that extreme programming style of agile development. I loved Phil's talk before because he talked about lean startup. This is the other part of the service we offer when we do an engagement together. We look at both the why, how do you validate, and how do you do that easily, cheaply, early on, and then how do you build quality software as you do it? How do you change organizations in doing it? So for a long time, we were just in the startup space, so really in the States, really looking and working with different startups, many of which are very successful today with names you would have heard of. And now we're sort of moving and we're doing both startups and enterprises. We're looking at big companies because often they're the hardest ones to change. You think about the red tape, the compliance issues, the open source software, library compliance stuff that goes on. Just be able to get them moving. It's a challenging process. So we focus on both startups because you get to work on really cool and interesting technologies right off the bat often, and large companies and help them sort of change how they do their process today. As Lawrence mentioned, we opened 3 weeks ago in Sydney. So we've just launched our office here in Sydney. So if you think about culture where people want to work, one of the things that we ask our team a lot, because it's important to us, is we do a lot of training and teaching on the job and really want to engage and keep employees engaged. So we ask people regularly, why do you like working for us? Or what's the most exciting thing about the company? Sorry. What's the most exciting thing about the company? And you know what they respond? It's surprising, but it's wonderful. They respond, it's the, you're gonna click? The people. It's the people that make people really, like that other people love working with. It's that culture of who we hire, why we hire, and that empowerment which actually attracts the people as well. We want to talk a bit about this today, so you sort of hear what's the process, what's the environment, what are the things that keep people engaged? Because this is what you want as your number one thing at your company too. This is the thing that changes. You know, you can have grand mission statements, but if you have no one that wants to work with you in building them, you don't really have that other part of the equation.
Yeah, and so what we're going to focus here on is, I guess, a little bit about our culture, but certainly you can take some of these ideas away for your own business. And we focus on these kind of 6 core principles around empathy, communication, collaboration, abstract thinking, emotional intelligence or EQ, and the kind of the cultural fit. And if you look at empathy, that's probably our number one skill that we look for when we hire people. Because it's a very highly open and transparent environment, and people really need to feel like they're being heard or have a voice, if you will, so that we can make progress together. Communication, obviously, key in that environment as well. Open communication fosters trust and trustworthiness around the group. Collaboration in a couple of different ways. We actually do something called pair programming. We sit together and actually write code together, which is quite interesting. We also do it across all of our disciplines in product design, product management, where we put 2 brains to the same problem, so we can actually bounce ideas off each other. So obviously collaboration, working in a pairing situation is very important. And when you have that kind of collective ownership and shared knowledge, you can drive to an outcome much quicker. Abstract thinking, we always put our customers and our users first, so having the user-centric point of view, always throughout the whole process is very important. So we build the right thing at the end of the day for the customer. Emotional intelligence is something where we need our people to adapt. In this kind of really fast-paced, agile environment, the customer requirements are changing kind of almost daily, and we need people that can handle the constant change and be able to adapt and kind of control their emotions in that situation. And then cultural fit is the embodiment of all these core principles and really being the fabric of the company. And at least at Pivotal Labs, our three kind of core principles are, do the right thing, do what makes sense, and then most importantly, be kind. So when you look at, I guess, interview styles and when companies hire people, you often hear, war stories of like Google and Facebook asking questions like, why are manhole covers round? Anyway, just out of interest, does people know the answer to that question? What's that? Yeah, so it doesn't fall in. Exactly, yeah. Interesting, like, how many ants are there in the world? How many cars are in the world? Interesting, creative kind of questions, but are they effective? You should tailor your interviews and the process around the kind of key traits or behaviours that you're trying to look for or avoiding for that matter. So at Pivotal Labs, what we do is we have a very simple process. We don't have 14 interviews over several months. We have basically a two-step process. For engineers, for example, what they're going to be doing when they arrive at Pivotal Labs is pair programming. So what we do in the interview, we pair program. And we do a simple programming exercise to really test the skills that we talked about before around empathy, collaboration, communication. And the process we use will find those skills very, very quickly. And we then take that person and put them onto a real project with a customer, so that for two reasons. One, obviously we can gauge their technical skill and their non-technical skills around empathy and communication, but also it's really for them to see if they want to be in that situation themselves. So it works both ways. Some people may self-select because they don't want to be sitting next to someone all the day pairing and collaborating. Others may just want to put headphones on and do their own work. But our process is very simple. We can turn around candidates very quickly because we know exactly what we're looking for.
So this nice guy up here with his feet up on the desk. So we call this not sustainable, and not really what you want to go in your hiring or in your model at work. And I'll talk about a couple of things. I'm sure this is a very nice guy. I actually don't know who this is, but it's a nice slide because it conveys what we're trying to portray here. And that if there's somebody that isn't empathetic, and regardless of whether they're working and pairing in that kind of fashion that we do, or they're just working on a team, it's really important you hire empathetic people. And what does that mean? Someone that can put themselves in someone else's shoes and understand where they're coming from. This skill is really important regardless of your role, because if you want to enjoy working with the people that you work with each day. You spend a lot of time at work. You want to enjoy and be excited. We ask our team after we interview, are you excited about this person? If you're not, maybe they're not the right fit, because you've got to work with them day in and day out. So having the team part of that process is important. We don't have all of the team interview is the other side of that. So there's a bit of a balance to that process. So he's not sustainable because he's got his feet up on the desk. They might smell. One of his colleagues nearby might be able to smell. It's just that lack of empathy that he's portraying. And he's kind of closed off from the rest of the team. So just wanted to put that up there.
So sustainability does matter, because at the end of the day, happy staff produce their best work. And having a disciplined, kind of structured approach to the way we do our work leads to better outcomes. Tired staff, at least in the case for developers, introduce bugs into the system and burn out essentially if you make them work after hours and on the weekends trying to get stuff done. We believe our process around sustainability, having structured, disciplined processes throughout the workday, which we'll talk about in a minute. We'll go through a kind of day in the life. Is the answer really to long-term success when building a startup and a successful software company?
Yeah, so on that, sustainability for us means 40 hours a week. We do a standard day, 9 to 6 every day. You might find that 40 hours you could do more than that, and that's sustainable for you. It's not this magic number, but it's doing that consistently so you can predict how long things are going to take and how that's going for you is important. When you do a spike or you spend a lot of hours after work, you're not really getting that balance back, and you end up paying for that maybe the next day or for a couple of... You tend to find in these studies that it takes quite a while to recover from that and really be as efficient as you can be. So, I mean, I'm sure many of the startups here don't look like this, but this is just a reminder that this is not an exciting workplace. Like, you don't get excited, oh, I'm going to go sit at my cubicle today and I'm going to go put my headphones on. Like, why wouldn't you just work from home in this kind of model? Like, what's the real advantage to going to work? So we want to talk about environment matters as well. And this kind of environment is kind of old school, sort of a lot of the knowledge that we have today, just around how people communicate and how they work well together. Now, if you need quiet space, you need quiet space, and this is not saying you shouldn't have some quiet space, but this model sort of focuses on you working independently and doesn't really foster collaboration. This is a picture of our stand-up. So we do this every day at 9:05. The whole office gets together, and we talk for 5 minutes. It's not long. We talk about what's interesting, or if anyone needs help. So if you raise your hand and you're like, I need help on country codes to zip codes, or I'd like to look at a better marketing platform than what we're using. Someone else goes, oh, I can help you, and we get this immediate connection, and then they can go follow up afterwards. So it doesn't keep the whole office standing there going, oh, this guy's worrying on. It's very quick and efficient, and it means that you can collaborate and get that cross-communication happening really quickly. It's also open. This kind of shows the rest of the space. There's no cubicles there. There's still areas where we do certain things and areas where we do others. The kitchen's separated for the work because we think that's more efficient for us and also healthier for us. But this is kind of that open environment.
So I'm going to take you through kind of a grueling Pivotal Labs day. So, the day begins, everyone meets for breakfast at 8:45, and we have breakfast together. And the reason why we do that is we want to create this kind of community and this social aspect kind of outside of work, so people talk about anything interesting that's not related to work perhaps. It could be related to work, but kind of fostering this community and the social aspect of the employees. And the breakfasts are pretty awesome, by the way, as well. We usually have a chef come in and prepare the breakfast every morning. It's a small cost to pay to have really close-knitted community in the staff. And we stand, as Catherine talked about. It's a great forum to kind of share ideas and collaborate together. It's a very short meeting. We don't have lots and lots of meetings in our process. Short and sharp meetings, meaningful meetings. And this is one of them. And then we get down to work. And this is what pairing looks like. 2 developers or 2 designers or 2 product managers sitting next to each other where the screens are mirrored. So it's 2 monitors, 2 mice, 2 keyboards, but 1 machine. And really the purpose of that is that you're solving the problem together. And I talked about collaboration before. Obviously that is key, talking together, because often we will verbalize solutions out loud, bounce each other's ideas off each other before actually touching the keyboard. We do something else called test-driven development as well. And what we find is we take the requirements from the user point of view, we write a test first before we write the code, which makes sure that we actually deliver the feature that the user actually wants. And the pairs will bounce between each other, test driving and writing the code and flip-flop so that everyone has kind of a shared context of the system. We continue pairing through the day. We get exercise. Obviously, ping pong is important to step away from a problem that the pivots are working on, to go and relax a little bit, come back with a fresh mind and attack the problem that way. Of course, at the end of the day, we replenish with boutique beers, and it's a chance to kind of socialise and recap and do kind of a mini retro, if you will, of the day's activities and to socialise with the team members.
So you don't have to replenish, we just have it there, so if you want to replenish, you can. So I just wanted to talk about motivation. So we've talked about environment a bit, we've talked about what the day would look like. I want to talk about the other thing that's really important in hiring and engaging people, and that's thinking about their motivation. Often when you think about, in the software space, people have gone to this, there was a craze for a little while where software engineers are this magical unicorn type creature that you must, pay X amount and like look after in a certain way. I'm an engineer myself, so I can speak to like how I've been treated at different times as well. This is really the wrong mentality. This is this kind of idea that they could be superheroes. Oh, Jack was so great. He slaved all night to get that one bug fixed in production and created 10 more. There's this culture where you're really excited about that one, and we want to change that to be really excited about the team, because it is a team effort to get anything out, and it's the team working together well that makes you more efficient as well. So we get rid of that superhero kind of mentality. The other one is that slave to the machine, that person that works all hours or is always there late or always there, there early, and that's counterculture as well. That's not healthy. I certainly understand people have different sustainability paces, but we want to get rid of a mentality where you have to be there that extra hour to be the best on the team or to be the most effective. The other one is the millionaire one, where you're like, I got to pay him like 40 times what I pay everybody else just to keep him here, because my team can't survive without him, because I've got no redundancy. He's the only one that can solve that problem, and that's also a really unhealthy way to approach it. So the healthier ways, and if you're a fan of, I'm a big fan of Dan Pink and his motivation side of it. It's probably stuff you've heard of before. He talks about like a couple of different things people look for in every job. There's this ability to be autonomous. So this is being able to own your own work, not having to check in every 2 minutes with someone else, and not being dependent on somebody else. When you think about software development, on that scale, you've got to be able to set your team up so they can run and do, and they don't have to stop every 2 minutes or don't have to be micromanaged. And that's the kind of autonomy in your job that's really important. Another piece that's really important there is mastery. This idea that you come into a job to learn. You don't have all of the answers. Yeah, you've got experience, and yeah, you're qualified for the job, or you can learn that on the job if that makes sense. But you've got this ability to learn. As an employer, you should be looking for your team. What are the opportunities for them to learn? How can I invest to help them with their mastery? And I want to look for that attitude where they come to work wanting to learn. And they come to work, and that, again, on the empathy side, like, nobody likes that person that knows it all, So that ability to come to work to want to learn, that's a really important thing as you think about your team, who you're hiring, and then how you keep them engaged. The other one there is purpose. Purpose is the why. Why do I even want to work at this place? And it's got to be more than the snacks and the after hours and the culture and the environment and the ping pong, although ping pong, the team really does love ping pong, and the beer. It's got to be more than that, and that's why you kind of sort of think about your brand, think about your mission and the impact that it has, and make sure that translates to your team. As Phil talked about that go massive and that large vision, you've got to make sure your team's on board with that and they understand what it takes to get there. And that should be a regular part of the conversation that you have. You don't just set it once and forget it. You're constantly checking, is that still our mission? Maybe we've learned feedback, or maybe the problem space has changed since we've been doing this. Maybe we need to adjust our vision, and that's really a big part of it. And your team should be part of that conversation. And they should be part of understanding how something you do aligns to that vision. So there should be some consistency there. Autonomy is just that. So just to recap those three that I think are really important, and this talks to motivation. Pay is important too. I'm not dismissing pay, but people see it as the be-all, end-all, and that's not the case, because someone else will always pay more. That's what you always discover in this kind of industry as well. So looking at that, being empowering your team to work and to trust them to work that way. I'm giving them that opportunity to grow on the job, and connecting them to your purpose and your vision is really important to keep them engaged and also have them feel part of what you're building. So how can we help you? So we've just launched in Sydney. We've been here all of 3 weeks. We're super knowledgeable on all things Sydney. We're still figuring our way around and all of that. But how can we help you? So we do a number of things in the community because we want to help support the community. Yes, you can work with us. If you're a startup, or enterprise, or anybody, and you want to work with us, we can certainly talk to you about that. But other things that we can do is we are hosting a whole bunch of meetups. We're going to start that pipeline. At the moment, we've got the Cloud Foundry meetup, which is that platform as a service that might be suitable for you, might be something you're interested in. You want to talk about it with us a little bit more. There's Tech Talks, which is what we're just going to host and support. So if people are interested in talking something interesting, it doesn't actually have to be tech related. Just as a fun fact there, we used to call it brown bag lunch, but then we'd bring lunch in, and it kind of felt like we got our naming wrong a little bit. The other piece is open source. So as we work with our clients, we're always looking for, oh, that was a really cool little widget, or hey, this is a library that could be super helpful. hey client, there's no domain knowledge or language in here. How about we extract that and open source it? So that's something we're really big into as well. And we're always interested to hear if you've got an idea for something open sourced, if we can help, or if it's something related to something you've seen us do before. The last one there is product office hours. This is a free service that we offer. It's 1 hour. It's when we bring our lean startup thinking to the table, and we talk with you about your product and where you're up to. We ask about your vision, your goals, and we don't have all the domain expertise. We're really good on the process and the questioning around it to help tailor and help you structure how you want to do your business. We do focus on software products. It's just kind of where we're at. And with that, we ask questions like, hey, have you validated that there is a need? We talk about how you can validate the need first before we look at validating, does anyone want to solve this need? Like, i.e., will anyone use your product when you come? How can we validate that cheaply and efficiently? So this is a 1 hour service we offer each week. And it's just a good discussion. It's not anything more than that. And it's something that we want to do just to help the community and be part of the community as well. Because there's some, hearing some of these ideas before, there's some really cool ideas that we can help with just on asking some of those questions to help you validate and feel more comfortable in your ideas as well.
I would just add to that as well. So with the meetups, etc., we're down at Tankstream Labs, which is, if you don't know, a co-working space for startups, and we're very keen to engage in the startup community. We're already working with a couple in the same office, and that's how we got our bread and butter in Silicon Valley at Pivotal Labs, working with the likes of Groupon and Uber, etc., helping them build apps. So very interested in working with the startup community at large and hosting events at our premises. So if you're interested, there's my Twitter address and Catherine's Twitter address, at Loz Crowther, at Miss Quirky Girl. I have to ask you about that one later. Any questions on the topics we covered here today?
Hello.
Hello.
So I have a couple of questions. The first one is...
Hang on a sec. What company are you from?
I work with People for Success is the name of the company.
Okay.
Yeah. And we work with culture as well. And I have a question. How do you measure, or what's the evidence from your employees' points of view that you're actually living your pillars, these 5 pillars that you were talking about?
Sure. Yeah, a good answer to that is we have cats on display in our monitors in the office. That's a good evidence of culture. No, I'm just kidding. But no, certainly, when our job is done with the customer, we know that we have that culture there when they take it on board and go back to their own office and actually kind of replicate what they learnt at Pivotal Labs. We like to kind of teach our customers our methodology, right? So. And the way to do that is they come in and actually pair with us, sit next to us, learn everything we know. So we teach them how to fish, essentially, and then go back to their own office and replicate the same thing.
And just to add to that, so we do retrospectives with our clients. They sit there in a room and they tell us in like a happy, meh, sad sort of format what they like, what they don't. We also have we have some really senior engineers who know a lot more than what we do, and they come and they sit next to us and they work with us, and we learn from them and they learn from us the process side of it. That's what we're really aiming to teach. We have very talented engineers, but there are really talented engineers out there too. And what they come away saying is that was the best experience of my life. And it's because we're empathetic. It's because we're not trying to show one up the other. We're trying to work together to build the best product. And then they sort of see that and they sort of come on board with that. But the cultural side of it is really, really interesting, because the hard thing for a lot of the larger businesses we work with is they come on site and work in our environment. You can see it's very open, there's breakfast, there's all of those wonderful things. And then at the end of the engagement, they have to go back to their environment. And this forces a lot of that cultural change back in the company, because once you get used to like living a certain way or working a certain way, it's hard to go back. So that sort of forces that change on that side of it for the better for the employee, because the people we work with know that to keep their employees, they really got to start with that change within. We sort of remove that barrier to entry by doing it on site, so you don't have to worry about network or infrastructure, or even having it set up so you can actually pair, that you're not in that cubicle sort of style. And then when they bring it back, it's really interesting just where their first pain points are. Is it like just having a break, being able to have a space where you can talk to other people, or that sustainable pace? And so that's how we sort of see that we're successful there. But we also do internal retros with our teams as well, to hear from their perspective, how are we doing with our culture? Do you feel like we're still being kind? How are we doing on those values that we think are important? Are we doing a good job of that, or how can we improve? And we actually have our teams give us feedback really regularly, from everything like the lights are too bright, which they were, or to the breakfast is not good enough, or hey, this client, why did we say yes to this client? It doesn't feel like they're really interested in change. So we do that for the team as well, and I encourage you to do that within your own teams. You'll be surprised the sort of things you're going to hear from them, and the things that their biggest pain point might be something really simple you can solve.
Good question.
Oh, yeah. On staff motivation, for staff that are excelling, like obviously these three over here,
Brilliant.
what's your rewards and recognition program for staff that are excelling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. And rewards and recognition, it's a really interesting thing, because if you talk about a company like ours, we have a sales force, and then we also have an internal team that actually work on the project. So we have a sales force that are still incentivized the same way many sales forces are, on a base and then a commission model. With our own staff, we don't. We do just a base model, and we really engage with them. Their manager happens to have the same role they do. So we have an engineer on the floor full time that's also a manager, that takes some time out to be a manager so they can relate. It's really important. If you can't relate to the person's job, what are you doing there in the first place? And they can help and support in that role. And we do real-time feedback each quarter. So they're getting feedback, 3-4 times a year. And then we just recognize that yearly. That's the sort of the model we put forward. Because we have this balance of other things as well, that's sort of kept people engaged.
Yeah, I would add to that as well. So non-financial, non-commercial side, the variety of work that the pivots would be doing for a developer around different technology stacks. If they went and worked at another enterprise company, that may be kind of pigeonholed into a single environment in a domain space. But with Pivotal Labs, because we work with startups, enterprises across all different industry, not only do they get to work on different technologies, but also different problems to solve. So that really keeps the pivots engaged.
And we ask them regularly, hey, are you still happy in this stack? Say you've been doing Java with Spring for a while. Is that what you still want to do? What's the most important thing for you when you think about working with different clients? And they might tell us super large teams, or they might tell us really interesting integrations. Very rarely do they say political communication challenges. But we figure it out. We sort of ask their feedback as well.
Any other questions over there?
Hello.
Hi.
From Sabre Software. Quick question. What are your thoughts on conflict resolution? Especially if the employee is someone who's really passionate, but can come across maybe as arrogance.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And so when you've hired a team, it's easier when you've hired a team and you're starting from an empathy standpoint. It doesn't mean you don't have conflict. We're humans, we have conflict. Sometimes personality conflicts happen. If you're pairing in this model all day and you have a personality conflict, we find out about it really quickly, because one of those two people just doesn't want to work with the other. And that sort of happens really quickly. So we start by just, again, that manager that's in that same role starts by just talking to them about it, trying to understand, is this a solvable problem? i.e., have you just grabbed the keyboard too much? Because remember, you're even sharing who's driving. So there's this element of, are you even sharing the time on the keyboard? That typically, especially for people that are new to pairing, comes up a bit. So we first ask and try to figure out, is it solvable? And the next step is we might bring them into the room and talk about it. We're big on just opening it up and talking about it. Sometimes it's just personality. And regardless of what you do, the right thing to do is to rotate and bring someone else onto that team. And not everyone's going to work with everyone, but we do look at that empathy. So at least most people can work with most people. So we've got a good starting point.
Yeah, we put a lot of thought into how we pair up the individuals based on skill sets or interests. So hopefully 95% of the time we get it correct. But yeah, there's other tools that we have to handle the other situations.
And on that, I've been with the company 5 years, and I started as an engineer, so worked in this pairing model myself a lot of the time. And I worked with over 30 engineers in that sort of space, and only once did I have this moment where, I really do not enjoy working with you, and sort of had that situation come out. Yep.
I just lost it. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. My question is for founders of startups, what do you think is a great source to learn how to be a good manager?
Yeah. I think it's probably the same for anyone that wants to be a manager. That the right source is to think about, first thing is like, what sort of manager would I want is a really good starting point. Even that self-check and that regulation of like, okay, and understanding different personality types is really interesting too. There's a lot of stuff on Myers-Briggs that really helped me in my role of just understanding, hey, not everyone responds the same way or thinks the same way, and that was a really helpful even gut check. There's a whole bunch of leadership stuff that you can do, but role playing is also a really helpful tool on that front. I can follow up and send you some things that helped me. I'm just terrible at names, but I can follow up with you on that one, just on that side.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Other questions? Yeah, yep.
Hi there, from Industry Research. Just wondering, I got two sort of questions about pairing. It sounds like a great idea, pairing. I'm just wondering, is it quite an expensive thing to do? Because obviously you've got two people locked into something at one time.
Yeah.
Seems to me like quite an expensive thing.
Good question. It may seem that way, but ultimately, because two brains are working on the same solution, the productivity and effectiveness goes up. We've had customers who have adopted this approach and have done 4 or 5x their normal development cycle, and that's a massive improvement, which obviously has financial implications as well. So maybe the initial cost is more expensive, but obviously the reward is much bigger down in the long term.
But even then, there's a lot of benefits to pairing. There's this idea of you're not working off in a corner, working on your own thing. You're getting buy-in from someone else before you start. That person's validating your idea and your solution. You can't have it really, it's really hard to have an off day because there's two of you. There's high discipline going on because you're not checking your email or Facebook because who wants to share that with someone else? And there's this ability to really focus as part of it. It's also really sustainable. If someone goes away or on leave or sick, there's shared context of the code across the team. So you're not getting hit by those, and you're really sharing that knowledge from the team side of it as well. Obviously, it's great training. Like, imagine getting trained in a job where someone shows you what to do and gives you real-time feedback the whole time. But it's also upskilling for both people. So if one of you is stronger in one stack or one thing, you can learn from the other person, and you get that ability as well, let alone the cost effectiveness our teams have found. And we're talking companies like financial services companies to Groupon, GroupMe, whichever, both. I can't remember which one we worked with, but that side of it too that really see that value in that piece.
Yep, that's better. Thank you for that. That's good. I was just also wondering if you think that pairing could be used in management. For instance, I'm looking at starting a new division of my business, and now I'm thinking about pairing, and I'm entrusting this one person to actually make all the decisions about what's right and what might be wrong with this business. And I'm thinking, shit, that's too much of a big responsibility for one person, but I don't really have the money to hire two people, unfortunately. Maybe I would be their partner in that, I don't know.
Yeah, so how we onboard someone new to a role is we do pair with them for quite a while. You start off with pairing full time and you slowly ease that off if that's not a role you want to keep pairing. But that's a really effective model. So it's that kind of idea. Yeah, it's time intensive at first because you want to value that person getting it right and hearing that feedback. So it's really well worth it.
Can it be applied to management, do you think?
Yep. So we pair on the OD role here. We've been pairing on 8 associate director roles, office director roles, and for acronyms. We pair on a lot of the different roles that we have as part of a training step too. When we think about pairing on development, we don't see it as a training step. That's a side effect of the other values that we see.
Cool, thanks.
We do it in HR and the finance team.
So the sales team, we actually have 2 layers of sales teams. So we do kind of pair. We have sales team that's focused on the product side of the company. This is the big data products, the Cloud Foundry side, anything else I'm missing in that mix. And then we have a salesperson that focuses more on the labs and the consulting side. And the two of them work together when at any time that there is a labs piece. So we do pair on it.
Last question.
This is the last question.
Okay.
No pressure.
During the hiring process, you do come across candidates who are strong skilled and in the best behavior. How do you identify toxic candidates who are, well rehearsed, quite skill set? Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways. The same way we identify toxic clients, and yes, they do exist. As you have a conversation with them, you're looking for things like, are they interested in feedback? Do they want to change? And it's the same thing when you're looking for a candidate. We had one client, just as an aside, we were talking about doing a project with, and they said, what happens when you do something wrong? And we're like, what do you mean? They're like, well, you know, when there's a bug or something like that, what do you do? We're like, well, we'll first try to find out where the bug is, we'll try to resolve it, we'll write a regression test with it, and then we'll like share that knowledge with the team so everybody knows what went on and why. And it's kind of good learning back forward. And they go, no, what happens with the person that caused the bug? And that was a bit of a sign to us, yep, okay, we're not going to work with this client. It's clear that they have it, you know, we talked a little bit more about it, but it's clear that they had a different approach. If you're talking with someone, what's really interesting in the first stage interview that we do, it's 1 hour, it's a logical reasoning test, it's language independent, is we sort of work with them and we sort of correct them. You're like, or you let them correct you, like I make a typo. How do they respond when I make a typo? It's a really good tell of whether someone's empathetic or not. It's really small, but it's a really quick moment where you're like, oh, were they empathetic to that? That's not a make or break decision, obviously, but it's another factor that goes in as you think about working with them. When you're pairing with them in this way, you get this opportunity to say, actually, I think it should be done this way. And you see how they respond, and you see if the two of you can work together, and that really quickly identifies a toxic person, or a person that just doesn't want to work with others. And this is not cut out for everybody. Not everybody wants to work the way that we do, but we found it can be really efficient, but it has to take that person wanting to learn. So we look for that with everyone that we hire.
So, I mean, a good example would be someone who's very strong on the technical side with a PhD in computer science, what have you, may not have the empathy skills. And so they may have the technical chops, but you know, fail on some of the kind of pointed questions we asked around the communication, collaboration, and empathy, etc. You know, we're after people with a balance. Obviously, technical skills are important because that's what they're going to be doing, but have that balance across all the, you know, the 6 areas that we focused on.
So we'll be hanging around after this. So if you've got more questions, love to hear them, or just chat about what you're doing, what we're up to. And these are our contact details. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.